During my time as a real estate professional, probably my favorite part of the job has been educating first time home buyers or people who haven't put their foot into the real estate market in quite some time and walking them through the entire process of buying a home. When I meet customers for the first time, there are a million questions, and usually there's a lot of different directions that their minds are going, whether that's money or what type of house do I want or what's the market like, what are interest rates, oh my gosh, are they going to be leaving this beautiful couch? So many different questions. It's hard to make it feel like there's a straight line of where do we start and where do we end. So over the course of those details, we kind of try to create the idea of what's the process of buying a house so that we go from step one to here are the keys to your new beautiful home in a manner that will keep you involved in the process. It would make me very upset as a real estate professional to learn that customers of mine didn't really know what happened between writing up an offer and finishing on closing. I want everybody buying a home to understand and be a part of the process as much as possible so that they can appreciate all of the details that go into it and in the future, upon educating themselves, have an even better plan for the next property that they would like to purchase. So with that being said, and understanding how abstract and more of a spider web purchasing a property is like, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the process. Step number one. And no, step number one is not go on to Redfin, download the app, and look at a billion properties ranging from 1.8 million to $150,000. In fact, the number one thing that everybody who is looking at buying a house needs to do, and it's free, is get a pre-approval. Chris, I've never heard of a pre-approval before. Well, that's okay because we're going to talk about it right now. Unfortunately, and whether or not we want it to be true, the most important part of buying a house is what do you have in the bank? How much money are you making? What's your debt to income ratio? And how do you plan on paying for this house? And since I'm willing to go out on a limb and say you do not have enough money to purchase a house cash, we're going to need help from the bank. And that's okay. They have all the money and we want to live in a home. So we're going to reach out to preferably a local lender. Why a local lender? Well, there are a lot of different reasons. But once you reach out to a local lender, you can have access to all of the different programs that are happening locally. And with that information, if there's any type of down payment assistance or programs that are going on for your specific location, you're going to be able to access that because the lender will understand that information. Now, once we go through the process of filling out an application, giving them all of our personal secrets and informations that we've been too embarrassed to talk about to our friends for the last several years, they'll be able to look under the hood of our finances and tell us exactly how much we'll be able to receive, and that would be our purchasing power. Now, purchasing power is the price of a house that we're going to be able to buy based off of our debt, based off of our salary, and based off of all the financial details that the local lender is going to ask on his application. Now, once you've filled out that application, pretty soon you'll receive that pre-approval letter. And let's say for the purpose of this real estate transaction, you've been pre-approved for $400,000, a nice even number. And that's fantastic because the average house in the United States as of right now will go for about $414,000. Now, that will vary based off of location, size, and many other details, but that's the average house as of May 2025. Now, $400,000 is a decent amount of money and buying power for us to go have a lot of fun searching up different homes. So that'll bring us to probably the next step, is going and looking at houses. Yes, we'll do some research on Redfin. We're going to look up all of the fun details and different things there are. We're going to look at the pictures. Ooh, imagine me doing dishes by this sink and look at me sitting over there at the pool. All of these fun things. And now we've checked out some homes. So realistically, your next step after talking to a lender and gaining your pre-approval for $400,000 in this case is going and touring homes. That's the fun part. Realistically, it is. You're going to look at a ton of different homes and you're going to look at a lot of different scenarios, and you and whoever is buying the house with you are going to argue back and forth about what details are the most important. For example, he wants a 2-car garage. She wants a really big island in the kitchen. He wants space in the backyard to throw a ball. She wants walk-in closets. And you're going to make some compromises because realistically, it's difficult to find a house that has all of those things. And once you guys have agreed on what compromises fit into the best home and you've looked at several, you'll decide on one. You'll walk in and you'll say, this is the home for us. We want it. And I'll say, congratulations. Time to write up an offer. You're going to really want to know what goes into that offer. And realistically, it's pretty simple. There are a few negotiable terms, and we're going to discuss a lot of those negotiable terms in today's video so that you can understand what are we negotiating, Why are we allowing or giving that information up? And what do we need to know as far as winning an offer goes? Now, in negotiating terms, there's a lot we could discuss as far as writing up a winning offer and going ahead and succeeding and getting the best deal. And there are different avenues that you can go. For every individual, the best deal will be an open construct where we're able to take different wins for your specific needs. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to argue back and forth until we finally agree and we're going to be buying a house. Now we'll say that we're buying the house for $400,000 just to keep the numbers nice and clean. So we go under contract for the perfect home for $400,000, which is perfect because you were pre-approved for $400,000. So what are the steps so far? Get pre-approved. Go and find a home. Find the perfect home, write up and negotiate an offer. And now we are under contract. So congratulations, pop the champagne, get out the balloons, start telling all your friends and family that you're buying a house and you're a homeowner, except we just getting started. There is a lot of work that you have to do at this point, and that's okay because you have professionals around you who are going to help you get to the finish line. But what are those obstacles? Well, first and foremost, there are a lot of new characters that we're going to have to throw into our little story here. Inspectors, appraisers, different specialty inspectors, sell side agent, title company, your loan officer, every single person's assistant, survey, and all of these other groups that are going to help facilitate the purchasing of the property. But don't worry, you've got some people on your side who are going to help you make sure you don't miss out on any of those dates, payments, or processes, and that you have the best information necessary to continue forward and confidently through the deal. So now that we're under contract, let's have some real fun. A negotiable term is escrow, and it's also the first process of being under contract. Escrow is in reference to the earnest money or the fair deal money, the money that will demonstrate to the sell side that you have some skin in the game. Now, for you, the buyer, this is a negotiable term, but typically you'll find most people use about 1% of the purchase price. So in our case, $4,000 as an offering to the escrow gods, where you will turn this money into a group of people known as title. The title company will hold this money and they will be in charge of who will end up receiving this money ultimately. Now, in the ideal situation where we buy the home, this money will be going towards your closing cost or down payment, and you will receive it again, only just to give it back off to buy the home. But there are scenarios where if the house does not sell, this money will remain with the seller. And there are also scenarios where if for some reason we cannot move forward and purchase this home, the money returns to you. And we'll discuss each of those and the different pitfalls and contingencies that can be added in the contract for your protection. But escrow is number one, and you typically have about 3 days to get that turned into the title company, typically 1% of the purchase price, which in our instance is $4,000. So you've sent that off through the form of a wire transfer to the title company. They have confirmed receipt, and you're good to go. We have started our journey of 1,000 steps. But what's next? Well, we are in the inspection period. In our contracts, you have something called the inspection period. This inspection period is a time frame where you have the opportunity to pull out of a deal for whatever reason, no questions asked, and you'll get your escrow money back. So that $4,000 will return to you while you pull out of the deal. Now, there are only a few scenarios where you'll be able to receive this money beyond this point, so make sure you're very sure during your inspection period you have all the answers you need. That's why during this time we will have an inspection where you will hire an inspector who's going to walk through the house and rip it to shreds and give you a really long document with everything that's wrong with the house. And you will use that information to make sure you know every detail you want to know about the property prior to moving forward in the sale. Now, the length of the inspection period is a negotiable term, but typically on average we're looking at about 10 days. It can go anywhere from 7 to 15, but 10 is the nice middle ground where we end up, and you'll have those 10 days to get your inspection, read your report, and then as well receive the 4-point inspection. 4-point inspection will be done by the same inspector, but this is a specific inspection that we're going to use to determine whether or not we can receive insurance on the home. And yes, we need insurance in order to get a loan, whether you like it or you don't. If a house for some reason is uninsurable, you will not be able to get a loan because it is a requirement of the loan that you hold insurance at all times. So the 4-point inspection is extremely important and will determine whether or not we're able to purchase this home. So let's say, for example, one of the 4 points, which are electric panel, roof, AC, and water heater, are not in a functioning order. Too bad, can't buy the house anymore. No, well, not quite. We can reopen negotiations and say, hello, Mr. Seller, This house needs some repairs in order for me to get insurance. I need you to fix the roof. It is too old and will not work for insurance. And they can at that point say yes or no. And if they say no, we simply pull out of the sale and we move forward and you receive your escrow money and we'll go find a different house. And that's completely okay. You will, however, in this scenario, be out the price of inspection, which definitely varies by location. But recall you've paid for your inspection and the inspector has done his job whether or not you bought the house at all. So a little caution should always be noted when going under contract on a house because there are costs to going under contract. Even though it could probably be anywhere from $300 to $600 for an inspection, that isn't something you want to do 10 different times. That will rack up pretty quickly and that'll leave you a little bit frustrated. But keep in mind, that is the only money you'll be out because you are able to pull out of the sale and receive that $4,000 from escrow during the inspection period. Now, in a different for instance, let's say you went through the entire inspection. You are over the moon with the condition of the home. It's basically brand new inside, and the 4-point inspection completely passed with flying colors. There were no problems, and we're able to move forward and get insurance. Well, we used the 4-point during our inspection period to get that insurance quote, so we know approximately what our yearly payment will be, which will be tied into your monthly payment for your home. And again, as we mentioned, a requirement in order to buy a house is that it can get insurance because having a loan means you have to have insurance during the entire time you have the loan. This is an important detail because all over the country right now, the rules and regulations for insurance are getting a little bit more strict. So what it means for a seller is they need to have their house in a certain condition in order to access the majority of American buyers who are using loans. Because most people are not showing up with $400,000 in $1 bills and saying, hello, I'd love to buy your house, please. Because of those details for sellers, it has become a little bit more difficult to sell a house or at least to have a house market ready and completely marketable. That's one of the reasons, and there are a million different reasons as to why the inventory in the United States selling market has gone so high and has kind of pushed us into, as of May 2025, a buyer's market. Now, there are a lot of different details, and we're not getting into that right now, but the insurance changes, which I'm sure you've probably seen, read, or heard about on whatever social media, television program, or newspaper you read in, and that's an important detail for you to know because it is a big process of the inspection period. But again, for the sake of our story, the house is perfect. We've been insured and we are well within our budget for our pre-approval and we're good to move forward. Perfect news. We're about to exit the inspection period. We didn't need to negotiate any further terms, but if we did, we absolutely could have during this time. Now, since we're leaving this 10-day period and we're pushing past the inspection period, you no longer can pull out of the sale for whatever reason, no questions asked, and receive your escrow money. So the night of your final inspection period day is very important that you discuss with whoever is in your corner and you're confident that this is the house you want. Because although there will be opportunities moving forward to receive your $4,000 escrow money again, this is one of those pivotal moments where it will be really easy to do it if you needed to. Now, nobody's trying to scare you out of purchasing a home. In fact, most of us are probably really excited that you are buying a home. Not going to pretend like that's not the case, but it is important that you are comfortable with this specific property and the prices you've received from your loan officer for your monthly payment, and that would include at this point taxes as well as now insurance because we've done all of the necessary investigation in order to get those ideas and quotes. Fantastic. Are you following? Because we're doing a lot of different things. Moving forward beyond the inspection period, which we've now left, there are a few other important details. Two of them in particular that will be written into your contract are the appraisal contingency, and the financing contingency, These contingencies will allow you the opportunity, if something happens, to pull out of the sale and receive your $4,000 escrow deposit back. Now, these are very specific things that need to go wrong, and we are going to need to demonstrate some type of proof in order to receive that money. But let's start with the appraisal contingency. Again, this goes because you're buying a house with the money of somebody else, some big bank, and you have a lot of rules and regulations that you have to follow, and that's okay. What are some of those rules and regulations? Well, we've already talked about needing insurance. Well, here's another one. The house needs to appraise out. In other words, whatever you are spending on the property, whatever your agreed upon purchase price is, in our case, that's $400,000, You need to be able to demonstrate through an appraisal that the house is worth that much. Now, your loan officer will go ahead and order this as soon as we give them okay. A professional real estate agent will recommend that you wait until you've left the inspection period to order the appraisal, because why would you want to pay for an appraisal, which can cost anywhere from $600 to $1,000 on a house that you do not intend on buying? And once we've ordered that appraisal and you've paid for it, they will send out somebody who will do a private and independent study on the purchase price of the home. They'll use local and recent comparables, usually within half a mile of the home over the last 6 months. Certain properties have larger parameters, but that's the average. And they will go ahead and determine if what you are paying for the home is fair. And if it isn't for some reason, then the house won't appraise out. At that point, we're going to have to reopen up negotiations, because if the house does not reach the price of what you want to pay for it, by you I mean the bank. So let's say the house didn't appraise out at $400,000. It appraised out at $390,000. Oh no. What do? Well, we're going to open up negotiations, and we're going to discuss this problem with the seller and say, your house only appraised out for $390,000 by a third party, unbiased appraiser who said this house is not worth $400,000, it's worth $390,000. Okay, now what? Well, we need you to readjust the purchase price to $390,000, or we will be pulling out of the sale and receiving our $4,000 escrow back. Now, we did pay for an appraisal. Keep that in mind. We also paid for our inspector. So those are costs that we will not recoup. However, since we will be able to use the fact that the house didn't appraise out in the appraisal process as a reason to pull out of the sale, we will get our $4,000 back, which is muy bueno. Now, we have a few options. If for some reason the seller decides they don't want to sell their house to you, they do not want to give you a price difference, and they will put it back on the market and try again with a different appraiser and a different buyer, which would be really annoying, but it does happen every single day. So what options do you have? Because you still really, really like this house. Well, the only other thing you can really do in this scenario is bring the $10,000 cash difference in this scenario and pay for it yourself with an extended down payment. Your loan amount will not be able to exceed $390,000 regardless of how much you bring down otherwise, unless you bring that extra difference. So if you have the cash to do it, you can still buy the house at that $400,000 mark, but most people probably would end up not wanting to buy a house that isn't worth what they're paying for based off of a third-party appraiser. But this is an important part of the entire process, because if the house doesn't appraise out, you can't get money from the bank, exactly like with the insurance. So if you can't get insurance, you can't get money from the bank. If it doesn't appraise out, you can't get money from the bank. Man, the bank's making this real complicated. There is a theme that you'll notice that does continue. So we've covered the appraisal process. There's another deadline, another contingency, another chance to receive your $4,000 back if you cannot buy this house. And that was the financing contingency. Now, with this contingency, if anything happens on the financing side of things and you are not able to receive a loan from the bank, then you are able to pull out of the sale and receive your $4,000. Now, we are going to need some type of evidence in order to demonstrate that this is true, and that will come from the lender directly. But once we provide said evidence, your $4,000 can return to you, as long as all of this has happened before the deadline. There'll be a specific date added into the contract, and that will be the financing contingency deadline. Now, there are cases where that can be extended, but realistically, you should have all the information you need before that date goes by, and then you'll be able to move forward. Now, some scenarios where you might need to use said contingency. Let's say that from the time you went under contract all the way up until the financing contingency has yet to expire, you lose your job. You're going to want to talk to your lender about this ASAP, because you can tell them, hey, I no longer have that source of income, and you will no longer receive a loan. And this is very easy to demonstrate and to prove, so you will back out of the sale. You're not buying the house. You just lost your job. You don't have the money you said you had when you got the pre-approval, and this is going to change some of the process. A pain in the butt? Absolutely, you bet you, but it is a lot better than the alternative of getting to the final day, not being able to buy the house still, because they're going to verify all of this anyway, and now you're past your financing contingency, so you can't get your $4,000 back either. So be honest with your lender and your agents and everybody throughout the process, because it's only going to help you if they know all the details. Although you would think you don't need to explain that to people, but people don't know. So it's okay. That's why we're here talking about it. Another relatively popular one somehow is you go and you buy a brand new car. and you run your credit, and now you have this brand new $600 payment on that really cool shiny Corvette that you've been wanting for years, and you've done that in between the time that you got your pre-approval and you closed on your new house. That's going to cause a problem. And I'm sure everybody's heard, don't buy a new car because it'll throw all your numbers out of whack. And it's realistically true. Buying a brand new car and changing your debt to income, which is the percentage of the money that you make versus what you spend on your bills every month. And this does calculate into what you're purchasing for your mortgage. So all of these numbers have to cohesively make sense up to the point of closing. And if for some reason they don't, for whatever happened, you will be able to pull out of the sale and receive your $4,000 back. But it will allow you to have opportunities where you can pull that money back into your bank account and out of escrow. So those are the contingencies. There are several other types of contingencies which we won't get into in this video, but for example, a contingency for the sale of a property. If you own a home and you need to sell a home in order to buy a house, but you want to go under contract on a new house before your old house is sold, you write up an offer that has a contingency of sold property. And that says that in the time frame between when you go under contract all the way up until you sell your house, you are able to pull out of the contract if for some reason that house doesn't sell. And then, we're flip-flopping back and forth. And it can get extremely complicated, but it is not an uncommon situation for a lot of people who need to move from one house, but need the equity from that house in order to buy the next. So there are some ways that it can get pretty complicated. We went over some really standard and some pretty simple ways, but of course we'll discuss some other contingencies and ways that the contract can benefit or protect you in another video. Let's talk about a few other things that need to happen from the time you go under contract until approximately 30 days later when you close, and then what it would be like on the day of closing. This is a long process, remember. There are a lot of different hands, people's emails, phone numbers, secretaries, assistants, helpers, friends of people that will be involved during this entire process, and it's a lot to tie together, but realistically, you'll have a team of people behind you helping you if you're using an agent and if that agent knows what they're doing. I'm not going to pretend like every single agent knows what they're doing. I don't think that would be fair. But in a scenario where you've selected your agent wisely and they're sitting here setting up these contracts, setting up these offers, these negotiations and details for you, you'll have a complete understanding of what's going on and what deadlines need to be met. Now, other things that have to happen, and this will happen through title, the third-party company that's holding your escrow money, they are going to go ahead and make sure there are no liens on the property, that all the permits have been checked and closed, and that all of the information about the property with the county or the city or the state is accurate and correct. Once we have all of that information clear and there are no clouds on the property and we have a clear title, we'll be able to move forward. But part of that process is also the survey. Assuming no major changes have happened to the house in the last couple years and we have a relatively new survey, you can use whichever survey is on file, but a lot of times the title company requests that you pay for a survey. And yeah, that's going to cost you another $300 to $500 depending on where you live and who you use. But that will allow you to get a clear idea of if there are any encroachments on your land, if the fence was built in the right spot, and what other details are going on from the city and building perspective of the home. There's another thing that we'll need before we can close is a clean survey. Sometimes you have to pay for it, sometimes they have one on file. So just so we're keeping track, beyond the $4,000 and the closing costs and the down payment you're going to put on the home, there are a few things that we've had to pay for. Number one, inspection. The primary inspection of the home and the 4-point inspection, which can cost anywhere from $300 to $600. The appraisal, which is required by the loan, and you're going to probably pay anywhere from $600 to $800 for that, depending on where you live. And then, of course, now the survey, another $300 to $500 that you're going to have to spend in order to get that information to get to closing. Now, those details are important because I think everybody needs to know the costs of buying a house, not including the actual cost of buying the house. Yeah, there's a lot of steps here. That's why we have a 30-minute video talking about the process of buying a house for people who have never done it before or haven't done it in a very long time. And that's okay. We're learning together. In fact, I'm still learning every day, and there are a lot of changing details in the world of real estate, as well as new scenarios and situations that might make it seem a little bit more complicated from time to time. But again, we've been talking about the standard status quo as if this deal was happening without any issues, which is lovely because there are issues that come, and sometimes it requires a lot of agreement from both the sell side and the buy side in order to move forward. With all of that being said, title is done. We're happy. No clouds on the title. Survey's been got. We are appraised. There are no issues there. You haven't lost your job or bought a car or used your credit card. Let's get ready to close. What does that look like? Well, you're going to get a lot of paperwork in the final days leading up to the purchase of your property. In fact, there are requirements for lenders to send certain documents to you for you to review and sign that say you're aware of what it's going to cost you, down payment, closing costs, and monthly payment for the home. Now, there are a lot of different details as to what that's going to cost, and I know your number one question right now is, how much is that going to cost me? Well, it's going to be significant or it's going to be little. It really depends on what type of loan, what type of process, what type of terms were negotiated in the contract, and there are quite literally a billion different things that will determine what you're paying for, what you need, and how much money you're going to need, or as we refer to it in the business, cash to close. Your cash to close will be determined and given to you a couple days before buying your property, and then on closing day, that money will be wired over by you to the title company. The morning of closing day, we're going to go ahead and meet at the property and do something called the final walkthrough. Now, during the final walkthrough, we basically just want to make sure the house didn't burn down overnight, get hit by a meteor, or wasn't taken over by a bunch of space cows. I find it very unlikely that you want to buy a house that is no longer there because a rock fell out of space and landed on it. So it's a pretty good idea to put eyes on your $400,000 purchase the hour before you buy it. That's the final walkthrough. We're going to go, yep, the house looks the same like it did when we went under contract. Fantastic news. Let's go to the title company. The title company is typically where you're going to go ahead and hold closing. When you get to the title company, make sure you say yes when they ask if you want water or soda. I can't tell you how many people say, no, I'm okay, I don't want water. They're taking enough money from you guys. Get your free water or your free soda or whatever they're offering, sometimes chips or candy. Like, yeah, you'll want that stuff. If they're giving you a pen, stuff that pen so far into your bag that you'll find it next year when you're cleaning out your purse. So now you've gotten all your goodies. We're going to sit down at the table and you're going to sign that many pages of paper. The majority of those pages of paper are because, I bet you've guessed it by now, you're getting a loan. The bank wants to make sure every single scenario that you could possibly think of to not pay back the bank is covered in these papers. They're going to go through all the punishments, the fines, the penalties, the paper that says when you're going to pay off your house and how much interest that you're going to pay over time. Not fun paperwork, but required paperwork in order for you to get the funding from the bank, which you need to buy your house. And every single hurdle nearly so far has been to get funding to buy your house. So I think you'll find it's pretty important that we pay attention during this hour or so as you're signing all of these documents. Now, the title company will provide for us a notary, and that notary will make sure all the documents are done correctly. And once we've finished signing 10,000 paperwork and you've drinking 3, 4, or 5 Cokes because they're free and you're taking them, we're going to go ahead and submit that to the lender. The lender's going to go over all the paperwork, make sure we're not missing any I's, T's, dots, slashes, commas, apostrophes, whatever they need to feel satisfied. And then they will send you your money, the money that you need for your loan. Now that, plus the money that you sent in, will equal the full amount in order to purchase the property. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, you will be funded. What does that mean? You are a homeowner. Congratulations. Once we get the okay from the title company that we are fully funded, that the bank has sent the money, that your money has come in, you can receive the key to your property, and from that minute forward, you are a homeowner. Congratulations. The American dream, as they say, is currently being led by you, and there were a lot of steps, and not even all the steps that we necessarily covered in this that brought you to that point. But if you've considered ever wanting to own a home, or you've been doing your own independent research, or you've even spoken to some professionals in the area, this is the general process for somebody in the state of Florida who wants to buy a home. Now, processes vary over place and time and location, so keep in mind that your process might look a little bit different than this. But this is a pretty standard process for purchasing a home, especially in the state of Florida. But I feel like for the most part, this is pretty plug and play across most states. Now, there are states that have specific rules and different subsets and things that need to happen and be added into contracts. But for the most part, that's what it's going to look like for you when you're trying to buy a home. Pre-approval, tour, write up an offer, negotiate, go under contract, inspection period, all of the different contingencies and things that have been added into the contract so that you are sure you're buying the right home and can afford it, and then closing, where you'll be able to have all the money transferred over, and then you'll be able to move into your home and drive off into the sunset like the champion that you are. Do you have any questions? Of course you have questions. You have so many questions because I just said so many words you've never even heard of before, and that's okay. Buying real estate is a lifelong commitment. It's not something that happens over a small month period, 2-month period. where you make friends with some real estate agent, they sell you the house and you never see them again. And although that is probably what happens most of the time, it's important to remember you now own and are responsible for maintaining and taking care of that land. And if you do, it's going to take care of you. Over the time, historically speaking, houses rise in value. Years down the road, when you're ready for a different home, different location, new job, you've had a kid, your puppy doesn't like the backyard anymore, whatever reason, when you're ready to sell, if you've put in time and love into that home, you'll be able to move forward in a really, really awesome way. So that's the idea, is to build and compound and use the inflation of the world to your benefit and on your side. I know in a lot of times it seems impossible and like there's so much to go through just money wise and bank and loan wise that it isn't possible. But hopefully this video gave you an idea of what's behind the curtain of somebody who's pushed into that phase of buying a home. And it's not just a dream on the other side of an app on your phone, but it's something that you can maybe even kind of visualize. Feel free to let me know in the comment section down below if this sparked any questions or thoughts. And definitely let me know how the process might differ in your state, and we can definitely learn together. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. Consider subscribing, and we'll catch you on the next one.